Alright, this is Mr. Gillum, and today we're going to divide decimals instead of whole numbers. So it's going to be very similar to when we did whole numbers. In fact, you might see some of these slides that look very familiar to you. So just a real quick reminder about when I'm using these words in the presentation here. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what they mean. The dividend is the number underneath the division sign. So 16 would be the dividend. Okay, the divisor is the number you're finding out how many times it will fit into the dividend. The quotient is the result of a division problem. And your remainder down here, we like to write it as a fraction, or I would like you to write it as a fraction, is what's left over. Okay, but today we're doing decimals, so things might be a little different. Let's take a look. Today, since we're doing decimals instead of whole numbers, what I want you to do is I want you to change them into whole numbers and then divide them. So as long as you know how to change them into whole numbers, then you're good to go. And the reason we're going to do this is because it has to do with equivalent fractions. What I mean by that is this. We know that 1/2 is the same as 10 over 20. It's the same as 100 over 200 is the same as 1,000 over 2,000. Okay, and if you get the idea, what I'm doing is I'm just multiplying it by 10 each time. And I know that's keeping the fraction equivalent. But also, if I'm multiplying to the right, what I'm doing is really dividing by to the left. So as you can see, I'm moving the decimal place from 1 to 10. To 10 to 100. It's going up one decimal place each time. It also works going backwards. So 0.1 to 0.2. 0.1 is half of 0.2. Or 0.01 to 0.02. Okay, they're all the same. And so as long as I move the decimal point the same number on top as I do on the bottom, then I still have an equivalent fraction, and I'll have the same quotient. I'll say the resultant. So what you're going to see today is you're going to see decimals, and we're going to move the decimals until both numbers are whole numbers, and then we're going to divide. We can do this because we'll keep the numbers equivalent as far as fractions are concerned. So again, your long division steps here. We had this little helper, dad, mom, sister, brother, rover. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and repeat. And I spent some time discussing this in one of our former videos. So I think we're going to just kind of just remind you of this, and we're going to move on. And so now you can see that these problems probably look familiar as well. Well, before they had no decimals in them, it was just 60 divided by 4. But now they do have decimals. It's 60 divided by 0.4. So 60 is my, what we call the dividend. Okay, my divisor is 0.4. However, I don't really like messing with decimals. So what we're going to do before we even start this problem is I'm going to change this problem. I'm going to say this is really the same as 60 divided by 0.4. Could be written like that. If I move the decimal point one time, it could really be 600 divided by 4. Move the decimal once and move the decimal once. And so now I just have a problem like I've had in the past. So instead of doing 60 divided by 0.4 and not sure where the decimal place is going to end up at, what I'm going to do is do 600 divided by 4 instead of 60 divided by 0.4. Okay, I just moved the decimal place one spot, but I had to do it on both of the numbers. So now I'm just following my long division steps, which we've been practicing. Bring down my 0, and then I know 4 goes into 25 times. Subtract 20. And bring down my last 0. And so I know that the solution will be 150, the quotient. All right, so before we divide is the big thing that changes today. We just need to make sure the decimals are gone before we divide. So what I notice here is I have two numbers with decimals. So this could also be written as 55.2 divided by 0.3. And an equivalent fraction to that, if I move the decimal over 1 on both the top and the bottom, would be 552 over 3 like that. Well, I can do 552 divided by 3 because we know how to divide whole numbers. And I know that those numbers will be equivalent because those are equivalent fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and follow my steps now, except for now, instead of 55.2 divided by 0.3, I have 552 divided by 3. And they're equivalent fractions, so my outcome, my quotient will be the same. 3 goes into 5 one time. 3 goes into 25 8 times. And 3 goes into 12 4 times. No remainder. The quotient is 184. Okay, so really it's just a matter of getting those decimals, rid of those decimals, and then it's the same thing that we've done before. Looking at another one here. We have 0.62 divided by 4. Now be careful here because 0.62 is smaller than 4, but it still goes as the dividend, and 4 is still the divisor. Before I do that, I'm going to write it like this. And I see that I'm moving the decimal place 2 times to get rid of it, 62. But I would also need to move it, my invisible decimal point, 2 times. So really what we have is 62 divided by 400. So let's do that. 62 divided by 400. And notice how I left some space under here. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to make sure I know where my decimal goes. I'm going to put it right there. Okay, and I know 400 doesn't go into 62, so I'm going to put 62.0. I'm going to put some placeholders. I do know that 400 goes into 620. It goes in one time. Now when I subtract 400, I have 220. Since there's no number to bring down next, I'm going to put another placeholder and bring him down. So now I have a 0 here. And 4 goes into 22 5 times, so I bet 400 goes into 2200 5 times. I'm going to put a 5 there, and I know I'm subtracting 2000. So I'm using my estimation skills, really. That leaves me with 200. I'm going to bring down another imaginary 0. That's just a placeholder. And put him right there. And so now 400 goes into 2000 5 times. So I've got my solution here, my quotient. 5 times 400 is 2000. No remainder. There we go. So until you see a pattern in the decimal, you keep dividing and dividing and keep adding placeholders until you don't see a pattern. Sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes it doesn't take long at all. But it would make sense that we have a number less than 0, or sorry, less than 1, because 62 is smaller than 400. So it would make sense that our answer is less than 1. So our quotient would be 0.155. Okay? Let's take a look at this next one, and it's important because we're going to have to use some placeholders again. I'm going to rewrite this as 0.553 divided by 0.3 like this. I need to move that decimal till it's gone. And it takes me 3 times on the top, so I need to also move it 3 times on the bottom. So really what I have is 553 divided by 300. 553 divided by 300. And so I'll solve this like I usually do. I know 300 goes into 553 one time. So I'll subtract 300, and my next part is 553. And now, because I don't have anything left to bring down, I'm going to use my decimal. I'm going to start with my decimal and start with my placeholder. So the 0 is what I'm bringing down. 300 goes into 530 one time again. And when I subtract, I get 230. So again, I'm going to put a 0 and bring him down. 300 goes into 2300 7 times, because I know 3 goes into 23 7 times. I'm going to put a 7 there. And I'm going to bring down my next 0. And I know 3 goes into 20 6 times. So 6 will be my next number that I'm choosing. And I'm going to subtract 1800, bringing me with a 200 left. And I'm bringing down another 0, and what you're going to see is I'm going to keep getting 2000 over and over and over and over. So I'm going to keep having to put 6 a lot of times. So what I'm going to do, instead of just writing 6, 6, 6, 6 over and over and over, there's a symbol. It's just a little dash that says that I'm just going to keep getting 6 over and over and over and over. The more times I do this, let's see if I can scroll down. I'm going to keep putting a 6 here and subtracting 1800. Well, that's 200 again. And then my next 0 is going to come down, and it's going to keep being 2000, 2000, 2000. That's why I know I'm going to keep continuing to get 6 over and over. So instead of writing 6 until forever, I'm just going to put a little dash over that 6 like so, a little top hat, and that just represents that it goes on forever. So I know there's a few more problems on your notes. I think that you get the idea. So just remember, before you start dividing, I would like you to move the decimal until they're both whole numbers and then divide it like they are whole numbers. Because whether they're decimals or whole numbers, as long as you are doing the same to the top and the bottom of the fraction, you have an equivalent fraction. That's it for today.